How's it, guys? Video lesson week 2, 21 FAO study group. So first, what I like to mention at the beginning of every video, what I start to do is I want to make sure that it's clear that this study group is not associated, not affiliated with the department. It's me taking the opportunity to discuss things I find are necessary for various positions on my own. And I just want to be clear about that. This is not meant in any way to directly prepare you for a promotion per se. It's me trying to attempt to help you prepare for a position, right? So with that said, I don't know the format of the exam. I don't know anything specific about it. So even the assessments that we do, which I'm going to change the name of, I'll come to that later, is an attempt for me to build something tangible and meaningful that you can practice and prepare for the position that you're trying to attain. And in this case, we're in the 21 FAO study group, so we're trying to prepare people to be drivers, fire apparatus operators. So just wanted to make sure that was clear. So the intent of this study group, again, is for SOG familiarization and elaboration. So basically, when we talk about institutional knowledge of our department, everything we do, they're all related to our SOGs and rules and regs. And for a lot that I've come to find out is there's been a disconnect because people don't understand or know how to fully interpret the SOGs. So really that is what I'm trying to take the opportunity to do here, is build familiarity and application of the SOGs to what happens out there in the stations, to what happens out there on the fire grounds. So first, format. If you were part of the 21 CPT study group, you knew that I had a tendency to run on, and some of the feedback where the videos were getting to be too long. So what I'm going to try for the 21 FAO group is limit all videos to 20 minutes in 4 sections of 5 minutes each. So the first section will always be a review. I've gotten a few email questions for clarification. So review any questions, any concerns, talk about any quiz errors, that kind of thing. So that'll be the first 5 minutes, and then any logistics with the class. The second will be perspective on the driver's position. So just take 5 minutes a week to share different attitudes, different perspectives on the driver's position, historical perspectives, modern perspectives, and how you can take the good, take the bad, take it as anecdotal, right? No right, no wrong. It's for you to apply in the way you see fit. And then how that influences your development for the next position, however that may look for you in the department. The third section will be, what I want to do is go over the scenarios. So you guys are getting 2 scenarios a week. So it'll take 5 minutes or so to discuss the scenarios, break them down, what the intent was on my part, and what I'm hoping you guys took away from it. So that's how this will be formatted in the future. I have my clock set up so I stay on point. So section 1 first was quiz errors, quiz 301. I believe that's quiz 2, number 17. Yes, the intent for the answer was supposed to be 100, 100, 100, 200, 200, 100, 200, 200. But I believe C and D I put the same. That shouldn't have affected the, or did it? I can't remember now. I'll check it out. But again, with the page, you should be able to reference that and make the correction. The intent with the quizzes, especially if you are sticking to Schedule A or Schedule 1, which is where there's 20 hours of reading a week, and you pre-test and post-test the quiz. You pre it at the beginning of the week and redo it at the end of the week. Is that you should be referencing every answer as elaborated in the study schedule. So it really doesn't matter what it does, because it's doing things neatly on my part. But it really doesn't matter if there's errors in the quiz, because you should be breaking down every single quiz question and referencing it with the page number. So, but yes, so quiz 301, quiz 2 based on 301, number 17. The other question I got was, I believe it's number 4 in 302, and that is regarding who can call for a Mayday. So if you think back to the email where I described the opportunity as you learn the SOGs, that you're getting to know the SOGs better and you're being able to pick up on things. One of them that you should pick up on is that in 2 different areas, they give 2 different criteria for who can call Mayday. So in this particular question, the way it was phrased, because it's phrased just a little bit different. The way it's phrased is that it is the answer that was given, and then the reference, I think it's 30204, the referenced SOG. But this is one of those things, you know, if you see something, you know, you want to be involved, you want to be a driver. Being a driver is understanding responsibility, is making corrections where you see it at any level, really. But now as you progress to a driver, you're going to start being an acting officer, and the thought is that one day that you potentially might want to become a captain, perhaps even a chief officer. So if you look at it from that perspective and take ownership, take responsibility, that right there is a perfect example where I mentioned in the email, you know, pull up, it'll take 5 minutes, pull up the revision request for the SOGs. It's on the shared drive under shared all standard operating guidelines, and just put that in section 302.04 and section 302.06. There's mixed information on who can call a Mayday. I think those are the SOGs off the top of my head, but if they're not, you understand the point is, you know, you can take 5 minutes and make that recommendation, and that'll improve it for the future generations. Right now you are the future generation. In 5 years you won't be the future generation. They'll be behind you, and we're trying to make it better for them. So continuing on the logistics, I already lost track of time. Continuing on the logistics is, for this study group, I will not be doing one-on-ones. Reason being that with the previous captains group, you know, everybody got the same assessments, everybody got the same quizzes, and including with your group, I've written 22 assessments already, almost 250, 300 quiz questions. But if I get a chance to work and develop with people one-on-one, then that might not seem fair to many. So to keep it fair, and it not only has to be fair, it has to look fair, is there'll be no one-on-one, so everybody will get the same material, get the same video lessons. Of course, you guys can email me, you guys can text me for one-off questions and whatnot. But yeah, so there won't be one-on-ones for this particular study group, simply because I want to make sure that not only does it look fair, that it is truly fair. And so everybody will get the same material, which it was in the previous group, but just because some people got to practice one-on-one, it may have created the idea that some people were more prepared. Even with the previous group, I made slots for, I think, 25. So everyone that was taking the driver's exam in the previous group, I made a slot. So if you wanted to do a one-on-one, everybody could, but not everybody took advantage. I think I only did 19 or 20 out of the 25 slots allotted. But yeah, I'd like to make sure that this is all the way legit, because if it's not, then it's not valuable, because it undermines the process of what we're trying to do. And for me, the primary process is that I am trying to get you guys better at your jobs. I am not trying to prepare you specifically for an exam. So even if you know you've already, and I'm getting good, like thoughtful answers, that, oh, you know, Chief, I see it this, I see it this, I see it this, I see it this. And it's the kind of thing where, what am I trying to say? That you should realize, if you look at the format of what I'm giving you, as far as the scenarios, they're not necessarily in your best interest to study for the exam. Because again, like I tell you, I don't know what is on the exam. I don't know how it's formatted. The way I formatted it is, and I'll go in this later, the way I formatted, I'll just go over it now. The way I formatted it is because I want you to be able to make your notes, realize, and then there's a column so you can see, yes, I am hitting this, no, I'm not, and then be able to elaborate for yourself. So much like I mentioned before, trauma assessment, medical assessment, when we're going through that in EMR for initial certification, we have to remember everything down, right, to pass. We have to do that to get certified. But now when you're actually out there on the line, if there's 30 points in that initial trauma or medical, you may actually activate 7 of them on an actual medical, 8 of them, 10 of them, right? So the idea is to have a foundation through the SOGs, right, institutional knowledge, but now take that and add it to a pragmatic, practical application approach on the fire scene or in the station. So that is what I will go over. So some other goals. So as I mentioned, if you're here strictly to use the scenarios as assessments with the intent of passing the captain's exam, I'm going to tell you, I think you're going to You're going to disappoint yourself because you're not going to learn as much as you potentially can, and you're going to be able to apply less to your actual job duties, both as a firefighter and a driver. So how do you go through the assessments? So because they're structured to support you on how to be an FAO versus how to pass a assessment, you have to learn how to make them effective for you. So you can read through the scenario and you can write down your own answers and then go and check them against the answers, and then use the notes column to make your adaptations. Okay, well, this is what it says. This is how I apply it. This is what it means to me. This is how, if I'm on the radio as an acting officer, I would actually do it, right? That's what the notes column is for. And tie it in. You may want to change the order. There may be a more natural flow based on your experience or your comfort level in which you want to approach things, right? So SOGs, guidelines as a foundation. Now the application is your choice, is how you want to apply the guideline and how you want to activate different parts. So you can write your own. Another successful way is to have somebody deliver it to you, whether that's at home or at the fire station. There's advantages to both. One of the advantages of having, say, another firefighter, your captain or your driver do it at the fire station is if you're trying to paraphrase, if you're trying to talk through an answer, they'll be able to understand what you're doing and support you, help you talk through it. If you're doing it at home, you'll have to give a verbatim perfect answer, because whoever's giving it to you may not have the same fire jargon, same fire lingo, where they understand what you're trying to elaborate, what you're trying to say. So they're waiting for you to say it exactly like that. So is there advantages and disadvantages to both? Yes. So what I would say is mix it up. Do some where you write down your own answers. Do some where somebody proctors it for you, both at the fire station and at home. And then depending on how your brain works, another very successful way is give it to yourself, as in read the scenario, ask a question and answer the question aloud, and then write down your notes and impressions on the answer you gave. So what that does now, when you're thinking about how the mind works, how the brain works, and how it triggers, is now you're using two different parts, because you're speaking, but you're also still processing and writing down through your hands. So you're activating multiple parts in your brain. Your brain is more engaged, and that'll create deeper understanding and deeper synthesis. My guess, I don't know, but so that is where that, when you're trying to think on how to deliver the scenarios to yourself, that is some of your options. Write it all down. When you read the questions, have somebody deliver, and then also by yourself speak aloud and write down impressions, right? Because yeah, you can write down verbatim answers, but ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to take what the SOG says and make that meaningful for us to apply. And the way you do that can be through impressions, right? How the SOG, how you interpret the SOG, that's what I mean by impressions. Okay, so second area is some thoughts on the driver position. So my idea, and this is going to sound pretty strict, but I am a stricter guy, is that when you become a driver, you should already be an expert at pumping. So what does expert at pumping means? An expert at pumping to me in this point in your career means that you can comfortably, I'm not going to say perfectly, but comfortably pump all our major hose lines and potential lays and troubleshoot them as well. That's what I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of readiness at this level, right? The job title literally is, fire apparatus operator, driver, engineer. And so you should be able to do that, right? You don't get to a position and now you have to learn a lot of it or most of it or majority of it. So myself, for example, I got promoted to driver on my 9-year anniversary. I had been a firefighter on Molokai for 1 year, engine 9, and then engine 10 for 3 years, and then I went to ladder for another 3 years, and then hazmat for 2 years. Does that equal 9? That equals 9. But so basically my last 5 years before I'd been promoted driver were on a ladder, truck ops, which even then we weren't traditionally truck ops like how we think of FGS companies now, but on a ladder where our focus was on pumping the stick, big volume, and then on hazmat where we didn't pump at all necessarily, right? We had enough water to do decon for ourselves, but we weren't pumping like an engine company. So even I reflect back on myself to get promoted as a driver. When you look at majority of our operations positions being either engine or tanker, right? Mobile water supplier, engine company positions operationally, I wouldn't say that I was actually ready to be a driver, but that's what I'm here trying to share so that you guys can understand that perspective. What does it take to build? And expert is not necessarily the right word. I shouldn't have used that word, but what does it take to build readiness? That when you step into the position day one, hey, no matter what kind of fire you get on that day, yeah, I can pump it, and if something goes wrong, I can troubleshoot it. Yeah, you're not a firefighter anymore, you're an FAO. And that's one of the things, one of the expectations, like I said in week one, right? If a firefighter is an SR-17 and a driver is an SR-21, you should consider yourself an SR-20. You're right there, and you know all the job duties, and you're comfortable with the job duties to assume the position. Yeah, you're not going to be a master at your craft. You're going to become a master at your craft, or you should have that as a goal once you become a driver, but you should be more than ready. Your readiness should be, and that's again, however you want to define it, but your readiness should be maxed to assume the position. So when you hear not old guys, but when you hear a 21, 25 plus year guys talk about the old days in fire service, especially Maui County, and one of the things I always hear them talk about is, man, drivers and firefighters, they used to pump a lot every day. So if the captain didn't have anything going on, the driver would be out there on the apparatus, on the front apron, pumping with their firefighters till lunch. 3 hours, okay? Whatever, changeover, okay, we're gonna do it again, okay, reconnect, okay, reload, we're gonna do it again, okay, reload, do it again, and they would drill nonstop for hours, and this happened at least 1, if not 2 out of the 3 days on rotation. And that's where firefighters became masters of their craft as it applies to being a driver. But now, we talk about today, is it as easy for us to do that? Can that be an expectation? I think it can, maybe not that hardcore, that much time, where you're spending 6 hours every 3-day rotation pumping. But I think we could definitely pump more than we do now in practice. Some of the things that go along with that, though, is when you look at those days, so I'm talking about even the days before I came in, before 2002, our call volume was much different. I mean, our department back then used to go on a sixth of the calls we go on now. Our department back then, this is pre-Wiley, I used to go on 3,000-4,000 calls a year. Now we go on 18,000. So our call volume is different. Our time allowed, the way we use our time on shift has changed. Even with that, we also have our quarterly drill schedule. That didn't start until 2005. The training captain at that time first implemented a bi-monthly drill schedule with quarterly evaluations, and that eventually went from 2 drills a month to 3, and now we have our quarterly drill schedule. So even that with pre-planning, we have our days are just that much more full. So being able to go outside and really develop our craft takes a lot more effort than it used to. And this also comes to our changing workforce as well. I think the attitude has, I think a more common attitude now than it has been in the past is, once you think you got it, that's enough. Like, I practiced that enough, right? It's about quantity versus quality. No, I practiced that 5 times. If I practiced it 5 times, so I should know it as well, I'm good. Versus whether it takes 1 time, 5 times, 15 times till it is solid in your brain. That is a perspective that I think we can get back to. And especially if you are here now and you qualify for this next exam and your intent is to be an FAO, you should definitely be in that mode. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because you could be in this position in 2, 3, 4 months from now. And now not only you're not that student anymore with your driver, and your driver's drilling you, you become the driver now, and this is the expectation, the job expectation for you to do with your firefighters. So if you think that's, oh wow, that's only 2, 3, 4 months away, I'm going to have 3 guys that expect me to lead them through all pumping, fire ground calculations, theoretical calculations, different hose line, different scenarios. That's a big responsibility. So That's just some old school perspective tying to new school and where we're at now. Okay, scenario one. So what I also want to do is every week is go over scenarios. So scenario one was a brush fire, was a 20-acre brush fire in Ukumehame, right? And this is very common. I got it as both an AO and a captain, where you're at station 3. You get called, oh yeah, smoke in the area, but it's in Ukumehame, which is smoking off wind most 9 out of 10 days of the year. So before you even get there, it's 25, 30, 35, 40, 50, 100 acres. That is not uncommon. That is a very reasonable expectation for the fires in that area. Now, if you picture yourself as a young driver, as an acting officer, think of that. Think of that, don't just take this. And again, if you're using this just as an assessment for the promotional process, you're going to miss an opportunity. You're going to miss a huge opportunity. Take this brush and wildland fire scenario as the acting officer at Engine 3 in 3 months. That is you. How would this really play out? How would your initial radio report sound? Have you been practicing? What are the elements to an initial radio report? How can you make that initial radio report function smoothly and process and apply it for your brain, so you don't feel like you're trying to rehearse, okay, wait, I have to say Star Wars, wait, what was the second A? No. What is actually going on? How do you read a scenario so that you can give a proper size up and inform all these incoming resources what is happening, what more help do you need, and what you're going to do, right? So brush and wildland fire scenario. So for example, initial radio report, Star Wars, right? Size of fire, type of fuel, advancing spread, residential, wind, action access, resources, and special situations. So I'm not going to go into this particular initial radio report, but I want to talk about just initial, like the perspective on initial radio reports in general. So if you guys know, Blue Card started in about 2011. My dad was in the department at the time. He was one of the he was one of the first guys sent to the mainland. I believe it was Clark County to train in Blue Card. So he was one of the first Blue Card instructors. And he left me all his instructor CDs when he retired. So I got to really go through it a lot and nitpick it and say this is good and say this is awesome and say this is too canned and develop my own opinion so that I could make it useful for myself and then how I train guys. So if you're on, some of you guys know on my past companies, I built my own scenarios using Sims You Share. I'd go around, take pictures of common facilities we had on Maui, put smoke, put fire, and then run Blue Card scenarios. But so if you talk about the initial radio report as a whole, what is the goal of an initial radio report? What do we focus on when we're giving the initial radio report? And again, I try to, as I mentioned earlier, what happened? What are we doing about it? How does it affect the responders, right? So this is the incident we have. This is what we're doing. This is what we need more of to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish at the incident. That's what an initial radio report is. So we see guys, they get so tied to the structure, right? Even like a structure fire. Okay, dispatch, engine one on scene, 123 Main Street. We have a small single story residential fire showing through the Alpha Delta corner. Engine one will be stretching a task line, attack line Alpha to the Alpha entrance for fire control and all clears. Please send us the balance of the first alarm. Engine one will be Wailuku command. All units switch to FD2. Damn it, I forgot to say offensive, right? And we've gotten into that, like, okay, I have to hit these bullet points. So what Blue Card should have done, or what initial radio reports should do, is give us a model. This is how we can effectively build our initial radio reports, so we can paint that picture. We know what resources to order, but ultimately that is based on what you're actually dealing with, right? We don't get so tied up. So an example I have is before we had Blue Card, we had, there was no standardized, there still isn't really, outside of our department, right? All departments have different ways that they size up. But so one of the old acronyms was called Coal Twas Wealth, and that's one I used to use. And I remember when I first got promoted driver, I'm trying to do all the superficial things like, I'm gonna apply Coal Twas Wealth to brush fires, to structure fires, to high-rise fires. Coal Twas Wealth, I'm gonna fill it in beforehand. And so I was doing a practice scenario, and it was a structure fire. It was with RC28. I was the AO, and we were doing structure fire. And I remember I went through Colto as well. They gave this long size up. It was like a minute and a half, and like everybody after was like, "Wow, that was awesome! You hit so many bullets. Wow, that was so awesome." But then it was like, "But what did he actually say? What did Colin actually say?" And people could remember, oh, well, he said, okay, well, he said, yeah, it's a building fire, and he said fire showing through this location. And when I went back to critique it, people remembered like 20-25% of what I actually said. So if you're an oncoming unit, what is the actual value in that? There is none. So I guess what I'm trying to come back to is initial radar report. Make it real, make it applicable, use this as the model, but it's more important that you understand and are clear about what you're saying, and that you're deliberate in what you're saying and what you're asking for, right? And that'll come through experience. But that's one of the points I wanted to touch up on regarding this brush fire scenario. Again, first in, so as I mentioned, some of you that were in the captain's group as well will see that you're getting repeat scenarios, and this will be more clear in the second one. But what I'm doing is I'm changing some of the sections, because there's different expectations I have for captains or captains candidates, right? Drivers going for captain versus firefighters going for firefighter 3. And I just realized this assessment that I'm talking about is week 2. It's ocean rescue, so I'll send that out today. So I guess I'll talk about that next week. So the second assessment was hazard zone command. Now, why did I give you guys hazard zone command? It's because as an FAO, as part of your responsibilities, our acting officer, you need to, or you should want to develop a general impression of what it means to be in command, because you will be in command as an acting officer at some point in your career. That is unavoidable. So you should have a general, and I don't mean from the firefighter perspective, because the firefighter perspective, it's very based on example or model, right? The firefighter perspective of hazard zone command is based on your experience with leadership. By that I mean when you work for a particular captain as your incumbent captain, or if you relo, that's your experience in hazard zone command. Oh, well, this is how he does that. This is how he does that. Cool, this is how he does that. And you take all these little bits and pieces to shape yourself. But now when you're actually going for driver, it's less informational, and now it has to be applicable. Okay, well, that is me now. I could be that acting officer. So what does hazard zone command really mean to me? So if you want to revisit this scenario, which is you are a newly promoted driver, begin your first assignment on an engine company. Your captain has decided to establish a list of skills that she wants to run you through, including both apparatus and equipment specific tasks, as well as acting officer responsibilities. Right, that's the scenario. So if you want to, why don't you revisit it, and I'm going to give you a little bit of perspective. The goal for the notes in this particular one is you should be trying to interpret, and I had a great conversation last week with one of the captain's candidates about this, is you should be trying to interpret when you read hazard zone command, what does that actually mean to you? Excuse me. So section 1, for example, reasons for command guidelines and responsibilities. So number 1, fix the responsibility for command on a specific individual through standard ID system, dependent upon the arrival sequence of companies and chief officers. So what this means is you should have a clear understanding of, from the outset of an incident, especially if it looks like it's going to be a 4, possibly transitioning to a 3-2-1, you should have a clear understanding on what command looks like. First in as the acting officer, senior captain comes on, may or may not. Chief officer comes on. Does he arrive concurrently per the SOGs? He should take command. If he doesn't, the decision can be made to go to a more senior captain. He can stick with you. He can take command. What you want to do is make sure that you have a clear understanding on how command flows on an incident. So that would be reasons for command guidelines for number 1. Another one, like for example, if something seems jargony or seems like information that is not readily available to you, how can you go out and find that? The example I give here is people are asking, ensure a seamless transition from type 5-4 incidents to type 3-2-1 incidents. So if you don't know what type 5 and 4 incidents are, or if you don't know the incident typing, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is, you know, you don't, this is not like, okay, well, I don't need to know what it is. I just need to remember to recite that in case I get this as an assessment, right? That's where I say if you use this strictly for assessments, you're going to fail. What you should go is, the hell is type 4, 5, 4 and type 3, 2, 1 incidents? I need to go look that up. I need to ask. I need to talk to one of the ICS instructors. I should ask a battalion chief, right? So type 5, single company, that's all the incidents we would go on, type 5 incidents. When we have multi-company, that becomes a type 4 multi-company, single operational or extended operational period. So even that could be a structure fire as a type 4. Now really, to me, what clues me into the delineation where you transition from 5-4 to a 3-2-1 is when you call resources outside or external to our normal agency / jurisdiction functional responsibilities. So what does that mean? That means we go on a brush fire. It is 10 acres. We put it out with engine 10, engine 1, engine 2, tanker 10, tanker 14. It's 2-acre fire and we put it out in 3 hours. That's a type 4, right? How that transitions to a type 3 is the incident is a little bit larger in scale, and now we call in for Goodfellow, we call in for Alpha Construction, we call in for External Resources, Department of Public Works, and this incident is going past its initial operational period and we're going into multiple operational periods, however that is defined. Is it a 4-day? Is it an overnight where our initial operational period ended at 1800 and we're going to go into one overnight and we come back to the next day and it's 100% contained? That's a multi-operational period, and we brought in external resources. So that's the clear delineation between where it moves from a 5-4 to a 3-2-1. But yeah, so functions of command. So when you hear the term functions of command, let's just define that first. So you should think in your head, I hear the term functions of command. What does that mean to me? Take a second to think about it. Take a second to write it down. And what that should, or a direction you could go into is what command is responsible to perform and what are their responsibilities. And if you led that way, now you can go down each bullet by bullet and try to make that meaningful for you. So those were the 2 assessments from week 1. One was hazard zone command and the other was brush and wildland fire. The 2 scenarios that we will go through this week are going to be, response package, which I did not give to the captains, and ocean search and rescue, which I did give to the captains, but I changed your sections because there is an expectation for captains that they have already responded to ocean search and rescues. So I took them in a different route to develop their skills, going from driver to captain. And for firefighters are going to be focused on more entry-level skills, firefighter to AOing your first few ocean rescues. But that is basically it. What I also want to do is I also want to go over a few practice questions that I'm just going to read on here. You can write them down, you can replay this, and you can rewatch, and you can just think about the questions aloud. I did not do this for the captains necessarily. I gave them some career-based, some SOG-based questions, and again, this is answering qualitative, right? This is not necessarily that you know the SOG. This is that you can frame an answer in your head and your ability to show poise, to show confidence, and respond effectively. But why I want to focus more of the group on career-based questions is because if you're a firefighter 3 going for captain, you've already been through this process, and you should have already answered, or you should definitely know the answers to some of these questions, right? If you don't know the answers to some of these questions and you're going to go into an interview, you're setting yourself up for failure. But at the point in your careers, firefighter 1's going for firefighter 3, this is stuff that you may or may not have thought about yet because you're not as far deep into your career. And for many, this will be your first, unless you're 2, this will be your first interview. This will be your first what am I trying? Examination process. So I'll try and do like maybe 3 questions a week. I'll just read. I'm not gonna necessarily give perspective. Maybe as the weeks go on, I think I might share, but just stuff that I want you guys to think of. Um, Stuff I want you guys to think of that creates a foundational base for you as a firefighter. So the first question is, and I don't know any other driver questions. I don't know any of the captain's interview questions. These are just questions I made up. So the first question is, as a driver with a changing workforce that is culturally different than it was 10 years ago, how do you plan to address working with those that are generationally different from you? What strategies could be successful in reaching them? So for you, more than likely you're in the younger generation, let's call it millennial. So what challenges will you encounter, do you anticipate encountering with Gen X or some baby boomers still left in the department? And what cultural differences, right? So the main heart of this question is to identify cultural differences and how we can work together to address those. So think about that kind of question. The second question I'll ask, and this is a big one, and it's the most obvious one, but it's an important one, is why do you want to be a fire apparatus operator, and what have you done in your career to prepare for the position? So I talk about this a lot in the captain's group. Is there is no straight line where you're supposed to be a firefighter one day, then you're supposed to be a driver, then you're supposed to be a captain, and you're supposed to be this, and you're supposed to be that. What you're really trying to do is find where you're happy and what you're happy doing within the department. That may lead you to testing for driver at your 6 or 7 year mark. That may lead you to finding a good company as a firefighter 1 and staying there 10, 15 years and testing for driver at your 15, 16, 17 year mark. Neither one is right, neither one is wrong. You have to understand that your fire career should complement your personal life and not overwhelm it and not put it out of sync. Your personal life, your family always comes first, and your fire career has to support that. So if you think you're supposed to be a driver now and you end up in a position that you don't want, and you're in that position for 2-3 years and you're unhappy, that really didn't make a whole lot of sense that you went for the driver's position or you went for a promotion. So with that said, think hard about that question. Why do you want to be a fire apparatus operator, and what have you done to prepare for the position? Okay, I feel like I should make up one more question. Okay, here's a question. So when you think of, because now you're going to be stepping the driver's position, as I mentioned in week 1, is very technical. So you're almost in like a specialist position, but you're also in a leadership position, right? So here's the question is, who is an example of someone you look up to outside of the department? What qualities do you admire about this person? And how would you translate this to the position of fire captain? So these questions I'm reading, they are actually, I wrote 20 or so sample questions for the captain's group, and that's what I'm reading from right now. I'm just changing them, I'm adapting them quickly in my head so they're more applicable to driver. Yeah, but so who is an example of someone you look up to outside of the department? What qualities do you admire about this person? How would you translate this to the position of fire apparatus operator? So I said fire captain the first time because, again, I was reading these captain's questions, but fire apparatus operator, and think of that. So if you're thinking about the fire apparatus operator position, you'd want to, and this is, I'm not telling you to do this, but where my mind goes is I go to somebody that is very attention to detailed, very technically proficient, and I also go to a young burgeoning leader that takes initiative and works hard to develop leadership skills that they don't have yet. So that's the kind of examples I'm looking for in my head to answer this question. Wow, so 20 minutes was the goal. I'm at 39 minutes and 48 seconds. So I apologize. I'll work harder on this next week. But yeah, that is all I got, guys. Much mahalo. Study hard. again, be in touch with any questions or concerns, and I will work hard to address them. All right. Thank you. Have a good week. Aloha.